So, I've been away for a while, and yeah, it's a beautiful, learning curve for me in that regard. Um, you know, I think the first lesson or the first thing that I'm taking out of it is that I'm supposed to go through ups and downs. That's part of life. You know, if you know, as a creative, if your practice only works when you're having the perfect week or the perfect day, then something's wrong, right? And not to be judgmental or anything, but I think your creative practice is something that, of course, I'll assume that you are devoted to what you do, and yeah, in that case, we are supposed to go through ups and downs, you know yeah, sometimes man, a week can be relaxed and then the next moment it's turbulent, right? And if your creativity only if you only remember your creativity when things are perfect, yeah, something's not right. That's the first lesson for me. I am supposed to go through ups and downs in my creative journey, and I'm the second thing about it, I'm not supposed to feel guilty about it or beat myself up about it, and the main thing is what I wanted to talk about today is to return. you know um it's important to be able to return depending on your craft. I think as creatives, we start a lot of things, we have a lot of ideas, which is good. That's what we want. However, not all of them get to see the finish line, and I think maybe that's a topic for another day, like how does one define what is finished, right? But depending on your craft or your art form, finished can look like a totally different things compared to the other. And I think one, regardless of what that looks like for you and your practice and your discipline, one should start things with the intention to finish them, even if it's a slight or gentle intention to say, hey, I like this idea, I probably should finish it sometime. Is that today? Is that tomorrow? Is that next week? Right? That will differ, right? Depending on the craft and even the project itself. So yeah, returning then is a very important part of one's creative practice in that regard, because it you start to build that self-trust, right? So for me, what was happening with, I haven't filmed or posted a YouTube video in weeks. Maybe we're headed towards 2 months now, right? At no point during that whole process did I sit and feel guilty or want to then quit forever. Yes, the feelings of embarrassment did come up. I'm like, people are probably waiting for another YouTube video and so forth. But I just told myself, this is at the start of my journey, right? And I'm supposed to go through the ups and downs, and I will return when I'm ready, right? And this is me. And I realized just yesterday how important that return is, right? The second thing I'm returning to is something I started 2 years ago. Like literally 2 years ago. yeah, there's a creative, um, I'll call it a reward system that, I started, in 2024. And, at the time I, went into it with such vigor. And, I was like really consumed by it. And, I finally finished it in the sense of like what I, had set out to accomplish. I'm like, these are the things, checklist and all that stuff. But when I was done, because I had, burnt so much energy with that particular project, my nervous system kind of marked it as that thing is dangerous, right? Don't touch it, because if we allow this guy to, work on this, he's gonna burn so much energy again, right? And yeah, it got far enough. Although there's a part where, I was like, this isn't taking off the way I wanted it to. But, my nervous system marked it as that. How do I know? I later on came up with, more ideas for it. A few small additions here and there. And all I needed to do was just, execute those few small updates. And we're up to scratch. And I've been contemplating this for months, right? And each time when I think about, opening up the files, I would cringe, and I'd feel my gut just, tug a little bit. And so, what it took was to just open up the files, just look through the things and, get familiar and, get to see just how much I had already done back then, and just to appreciate, the effort that I had put into it, and then to come back and remember the philosophy, the mission behind, why this reward system exists. And so yesterday I just found myself, just opening up the files and then updating it. And it didn't take as long as I thought it would, 2 hours max. And granted, it's also because a friend had taken interest in the project. They had asked, can I get, these badges of yours? And I was like, I just need to update it. And so I took that as an opportunity to, kind of push myself. I was supposed to be done on Monday, but, I was only done yesterday. So, yeah, right now I'm celebrating, 2 waves of the same thing, right? Being able to return to my creative practice, in to embrace things that matter to me, right? Speaking about creativity really matters to me, and this reward system that I created also is very close to my heart. So yeah, I'm giving myself an insignia for the return. And just if you've watched until this far, I'd like to prompt you to journal on some, or just reflect, right, on what are projects or things that you've neglected, or you've kind of, let's find a more gentle term, what are things that you've put down, right, that you feel deep inside you that I need to pick this up. I think just reflect on that, and I'd say go and visit it, just take a look and feel it out, I think that is a good way to release the shame and the embarrassment of not being consistent. I can't tell you how many times I hear that term, being consistent, and the way it's being spoken about in the creative community especially. I don't fully agree with it. It is important to be consistent, but consistency doesn't mean boom 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 the whole time, right? Consistency means being able to return. So yeah, thank you. I feel awkward now. I'll see you in the next one. This has been Your Creative Life with Proph. Peace.